The house felt too big the moment the door closed behind him. Not loud, not dramatic, just empty in a way that pressed against my ears. My husband said he'd be late. Again. He didn't sound apologetic, just efficient, like the house and I were things that would wait exactly where he left us. I told myself I was used to it. I told myself a lot of things that night. Dinner sat untouched on the stove, cooling into something stiff and uninviting. I turned off the flame and leaned against the counter, staring at my reflection in the dark window. I barely recognized the woman looking back. Her shoulders were slumped, her eyes tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. I used to think loneliness meant being alone. I was wrong. Loneliness is being surrounded by people who no longer see you. My son was the only other presence in the house. I hadn't heard him come down the stairs, but suddenly he was there, quiet as always. He asked if I was okay. Just like that. No preamble. No small talk. The question caught me off guard because it was the exact one I had been avoiding all evening. I said yes, of course I did. Mothers always say yes. He didn't argue. He just nodded, the way he does when he knows the answer is a lie but doesn't want to embarrass me by pointing it out. That we ate together at the table, the two of us sitting across from each other in a space meant for three. The empty chair felt louder than anything we said. He told me about his day, about things that mattered to him in a way that felt careful, deliberate. I listened, truly listened, and realized with a sudden ache that I hadn't done that with my husband in a long time. Somewhere along the way, conversations with him had turned into schedules and reminders and logistics. With my son, the words still meant something. When he finished eating, he didn't rush away like he usually did. He stayed, his elbows on the table, watching me with an intensity that made me shift in my seat. It wasn't unsettling exactly. It was attentive. Like he was making sure I didn't disappear if he looked away. I laughed it off and asked why he was staring. He shrugged and said I seemed sad lately. I opened my mouth to deny it, then closed it again. The truth sat heavy in my chest, unspoken but undeniable that I don't remember deciding to tell him anything. It just happened. A sentence slipped out about how his father had been busy. Another about how sometimes adults don't talk the way they should. I stopped myself before I went too far, but the line had already shifted. He listened without interrupting, his face serious, his posture still. When I finished, he said something simple, that I deserved to be happy. The words shouldn't have hit me the way they did, but they did. They landed somewhere tender and stayed there. That I reached across the table without thinking and squeezed his hand. It was meant to be reassuring, nothing more. Mothers comfort their children all the time. Still, the moment lingered longer than it should have. I felt his fingers tighten slightly around mine, like he was anchoring me. The contact grounded me and unsettled me all at once. I pulled my hand back and stood up too quickly, pretending to clear the dishes. Later, we sat in the living room, the television on but neither of us really watching. The glow painted the walls in shifting colors. He sat closer than usual, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him through the fabric of my sleeve. I told myself it was normal. The house was quiet. It was late. He leaned his head against my shoulder, and my first instinct was to let him. He was still my child. He still needed me. That was the story I clung to, but as the minutes passed, I became painfully aware of how much I needed him too. His presence filled the space my husband had left behind, and the relief of that scared me. I thought about moving away, about putting some distance between us, but the thought felt colder than the room itself. I stayed where I was, frozen between what was right and what was easy. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost careful. He said I didn't have to pretend with him. That line, more than anything else, lodged itself in my chest. I stared straight ahead, afraid that if I looked at him, something unspoken would become real. I realized then that the evening had shifted in a way I couldn't name yet. The house wasn't just quiet anymore. It was holding its breath that if I had known that this was the moment everything tilted, that the absence of my husband would create a presence far more complicated, I would have stood up. I would have said goodnight. I would have walked away. Instead, I stayed sitting there, telling myself I was just tired, just lonely, just human, never imagining how much those justifications were about to cost me. The next few days didn't bring clarity. They made everything worse. Once you start noticing something, you can't unsee it. Every small action begins to carry weight, every silence starts to feel intentional. I tried to act normal, to keep things steady for the sake of routine, but inside, something had already shifted. She wasn't doing anything obvious. That was the problem. There was no clear moment I could point to and say, this is wrong. Instead, it was a pattern of small things stacking on top of each other until they became impossible to ignore. Conversations stayed shallow. Eye contact felt brief, almost forced. Even when we sat in the same room, it felt like we were separated by something invisible but very real. Her phone became a constant presence. Always within reach. Always turned slightly away. I noticed how quickly she would respond to messages now, fingers moving fast, expression focused. But the moment I got close, the screen would dim, or she'd lock it without hesitation. It wasn't panic. It was practice that I started paying attention without making it obvious. Not because I wanted to spy, but because I couldn't quiet the feeling that something was being hidden from me. I told myself I was just observing, just trying to understand what had changed. Her routine shifted in subtle ways. She started taking longer to get ready, even on days when there was nowhere special to go. There was more effort in how she looked, but not for me. That was the part one couldn't explain away. When I complimented her, she'd smile briefly, say thanks, and move on like it didn't matter. Nights became the hardest. That used to be our time. Even if we didn't talk much, there was comfort in just being there together. Now, there was distance. Physical and emotional. She would turn away, scrolling through her phone, lost in something I wasn't a part of. Sleep didn't come easy for me anymore. My mind kept circling the same thoughts, trying to connect pieces that didn't fully make sense yet. I kept asking myself if I was imagining things, if I was letting insecurity take over. But every time I tried to dismiss it, something new would happen that pulled me right back in. One evening, I saw it again. The same name from that night. It flashed briefly on her screen before she angled it away. This time, I caught a little more. Not enough to understand everything, but enough to know it wasn't just casual conversation. There was familiarity there. A tone that didn't belong to strangers. That I felt something tighten in my chest, but I didn't react. Not outwardly. I couldn't. Not without proof. Not without understanding what I was actually dealing with. Instead, I asked a simple question. I kept my voice steady, as if it didn't matter. I asked who she was talking to. She didn't hesitate. Said it was someone from work. A colleague. Nothing important at IT sounded reasonable. It always did, but it didn't feel true. That I nodded, pretending to accept it, but inside, that answer only made things worse. Because now there was a gap between what I was being told and what I was starting to see. From that point on, I couldn't stop noticing. Every notification. Every slight smile that appeared and disappeared too quickly. Every moment she seemed present physically but mentally somewhere else. That I started questioning things I never thought I would. Not just her actions, but our entire relationship. When did this distance begin? Was it sudden, or had it been building quietly while I convinced myself everything was fine? There were moments I wanted to confront her directly, to just ask everything that was on my mind without holding back. But something stopped me every time. Maybe it was fear. Not of the confrontation itself, but of what the answers might be, because once something is said out loud, you can't take it back. Days passed, and the tension didn't break. It only grew heavier. I felt it in the silence, in the way we moved around each other like we were avoiding something neither of us wanted to face. Then one night, everything shifted again. She left her phone on the table when she walked out of the room. It was a small thing, something that probably meant nothing to her in that moment. But to me, it felt like an opportunity one hadn't been given before. That I stared at it longer than I should have. My mind racing, my heart beating faster than it had any reason to. I knew crossing that line would change something. There was no going back from it. For a second, I almost walked away. Told myself I didn't need to do this. That trust meant not looking, but then I remembered every moment that led up to this. Every unanswered feeling. Every quiet doubt that had been growing inside me, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. That I picked up the phone, the screen lit up instantly. No lock. No barrier. Just a list of notifications waiting to be seen. My eyes went straight to the name, the same one. This time, there was no quick movement to hide it. No explanation ready to cover it up, just words. Clear. Unfiltered. That I didn't read everything. I didn't need to, because the few lines I saw were enough to tell me this wasn't just casual, enough to tell me I wasn't imagining anything, enough to make everything I had been trying to deny feel real all at once. That I put the phone back exactly where it was, my hands slightly shaking, my mind suddenly too quiet, because in that moment, something inside me stopped questioning. And started understanding that I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I already knew. After that moment, things didn't explode the way I expected. They unraveled slowly, almost politely. We didn't acknowledge what had passed between us, but it lived in the space we shared. Every time our paths crossed, I felt it waiting there, unspoken and heavy. Conversations that once felt casual now carried weight. Words lingered. Silences stretched. I became hyper-aware of him, of how close he stood, of how easily my attention drifted toward him even when I told myself not to. I started looking forward to the smallest interactions. A question that didn't need asking. A comment meant only for me. It felt ridiculous how little it took to make my heart react. I told myself it was harmless, that enjoying someone's company didn't make me unfaithful. But deep down, I knew I was already protecting something I shouldn't be. I chose my words carefully around others. I kept parts of conversations just between us. That secrecy didn't feel wrong at first, it felt special. At home, the contrast grew impossible to ignore. My partner spoke, and I nodded. He reached out, and I responded out of habit, not desire. I hated myself for the comparison, yet my mind did it automatically. One connection felt flat and predictable. The other felt alive, charged with possibility. I wasn't falling in love, I told myself. I was just awake again. But even that sounded like an excuse when I said it in my head. That I caught myself making small changes. Dressing with more care. Checking my reflection before leaving. wondering if he would notice. Those thoughts came with immediate guilt, followed by justification. Wanting to feel attractive didn't make me a bad person. Wanting attention didn't erase my commitment. I clung to those rationalizations like lifelines, even as they began to fray. Then came the moment that stripped away my illusions. We were standing close enough to feel each other's presence without touching. The conversation had stalled, suspended in something heavier than words. I felt the shift before I saw it. His reaction was instinctive, unguarded, and unmistakable. My breath caught, shock racing through me. It wasn't the physical reality that overwhelmed me, it was what it revealed. Desire. Real, undeniable desire, mirrored by the heat rushing through my own body that I looked away instantly, heart pounding, cheeks burning. He noticed. Of course he did. The air thickened, filled with embarrassment and something dangerously close to longing. No one spoke. No one moved. And in that frozen second, I realized how far things had gone without a single deliberate step. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't harmless. This was mutual that I walked away first, my legs unsteady, mind racing. Every instinct screamed that I had to put distance between us. But distance didn't erase the image burned into my thoughts. It followed me home, sat with me at dinner, lay beside me in bed. I replayed it over and over, hating myself for how deeply it affected me. I had crossed a line I couldn't redraw. The guilt became louder after that. I found myself avoiding his eyes, then seeking them out moments later. I told myself I needed clarity, that silence would only make things worse. Another lie. The truth was, part of me wanted acknowledgement. Wanted him to confirm that I hadn't imagined the intensity of that moment at home. I felt like an imposter. Every normal gesture felt dishonest. My partner trusted me, laughed with me, spoke about the future, unaware that my thoughts were elsewhere. That knowledge sat heavy in my chest. I wasn't just betraying him with another person. I was betraying the version of myself I believed in, that I knew I should end whatever this was becoming. I knew the right thing was to step back, rebuild what I had neglected, confront the emptiness at home instead of escaping it. But knowing and doing are different things. Desire doesn't vanish just because you name it. And once you recognize that someone wants you in a way you've been starving for, it becomes dangerously easy to justify staying close, even when every part of you understands the cost. After that night, I stopped trusting comfort. I started observing patterns. That he changed his phone password 3 days later. Not casually. Not accidentally. Intentionally. I noticed because one evening he handed me his phone to check a delivery notification, then hesitated before unlocking it himself and placing it in my hand like a controlled object. The openness we once had was gone. Replaced by management. That he started going to the gym more often. New shirts. Better cologne. Haircuts every 2 weeks instead of every 2 months. He claimed he wanted to feel confident again. I wondered when confidence became something that needed secrecy. That he carried his phone everywhere. Kitchen. Balcony. Bathroom. Even quick trips to take out the trash. If a notification appeared, he angled the screen away. If I walked too close, the conversation ended. It wasn't dramatic. It was calculated. That I tested him once. Who's texting you this late? He didn't look up. Group chat. About what? Work stuff. At midnight, the lies weren't explosive. They were small and controlled. That's what made them dangerous. When I finally brought up the heart emoji, he didn't get defensive. He got offended. "You don't trust me?" he asked quietly, like I had wounded him. That I tried to explain it wasn't about trust. It was about transparency. But he turned it around so smoothly I almost apologized. "You're creating problems in your head," he said. "I can't even talk to people without you assuming something." People, not her. That I started questioning myself. Maybe I was insecure. Maybe 5 years had made me too dependent. Maybe this was what long-term relationships looked like after the honeymoon phase. Less passion. More routine, but routine doesn't hide messages. One evening he fell asleep on the couch. His phone rested on his chest, screen lighting up every few minutes. I stared at it from across the room, fighting the urge. I had never checked his phone before. Never felt the need. That night, I did that. My hands shook as I lifted it. He had changed the password, but I knew him. Birthdays mattered to him. I tried his mother's birthday, unlocked. The first thing I saw wasn't explicit. It was intimate. Her name sat at the top of his messages. The conversation wasn't short. It wasn't new. Weeks of daily communication that I scrolled, inside jokes I didn't understand. Complaints about work he never shared with me. Photos of his lunch sent to her. Voice notes. Laughing emojis. And then the lines that felt like knives. "I feel like you actually get me. I can't talk like this at home. You make my day better." My vision blurred, but I kept reading. She asked if he was happy. That he replied, "It's complicated." Complicated. 5 years reduced to one word. Then I saw it. "I wish I met you earlier." There was no confusion left. No room for interpretation. This wasn't casual. This wasn't friendly. This was emotional intimacy redirected somewhere else. That my chest tightened so hard I had to sit down. I could hear him breathing behind me, peaceful and unaware. The man who once told me I was his future was building a parallel connection in secret. That I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't insecure, that I was being replaced slowly. That I put the phone back exactly where it was and didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling and replayed every recent memory. The late nights. The sudden gym obsession. The distance. It all aligned too perfectly. That in the morning, I confronted him. That I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I asked one simple question: "Do you have feelings for her?" His face shifted. Not shocked. Not confused. Calculating. "What are you talking about?" I read the messages. Silence stretched between us like a pulled wire. "It's not what you think," he said finally. That I almost laughed. That sentence is universal. It always means exactly what you think. "You told her you wish you met her earlier." He ran his hands through his hair. "It's just talking. It's not physical. Nothing happened. Just talking. As if emotional betrayal doesn't count. That he said she understood him. That they connected over work stress. That it felt harmless. That he never meant for it to go that far. How far is far? I asked. That he couldn't answer. Instead, he flipped the focus. "If you weren't so distant lately, maybe I wouldn't need someone to talk to." There it was. The shift. The blame. That I felt anger rise, but underneath it was something worse. Sadness. Not because he chose someone else, but because he justified it. "So this is my fault?" I didn't say that. You implied it. He sighed like I was exhausting him. Like discovering betrayal was an inconvenience. "I'll stop talking to her," he said. If that's what you want. If that's what I want. As if basic loyalty was negotiable. I asked him directly. Do you love her? No, too quick. Do you have feelings for her? A pause. I don't know. That hurt more than a yes. I should have left right then. Everything inside me knew the foundation had cracked. But 5 years isn't easy to walk away from. Shared memories argue louder than logic. He promised it was over. Said he would delete her number. Said it meant nothing compared to us. He held my face and told me I was overthinking something small, but it wasn't small that he had already given someone else the parts of him that used to belong to me. I agreed to try. Not because I believed him completely, but because I wasn't ready to accept that our story might be ending. For a few days, he acted attentive again. More present. More affectionate. Almost like the beginning, but forced effort feels different than natural love, and even when he smiled at me, I couldn't stop wondering who he was thinking about when his phone stayed silent. I forgave him. At least on the surface, but trust doesn't reset. It fractures, and something inside me knew this wasn't the full truth. It was only the part one had managed to uncover.